Hey, it's Chuck. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth for Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw, and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. It is showtime, and welcome into Buckeye Huddle Prime Time. I appreciate you all so much for joining me. We made it, guys. We made it through the second bye week, open week, what have you, of the season. How are Ryan Day's Buckeyes coming off of time off? We have got some Penn State on deck on Saturday in a blackout at the shoe. I've got the black Buckeyes helmet out for a blackout. Will they surprise us with some black uniforms? I know those are kind of divisive. Most people like them, but there are some who really, really hate them. Now, word on the street is Nike has stopped making the black uniforms for the Buckeyes. Therefore, we will not see them. But I just watched Oregon play with some Grateful Dead uniforms with dancing bears and tie-dyed numbers on Saturday. I think they can provide Ohio State with some black uniforms. It's pretty basic. It's a pretty easy design. Of course, Ohio State, the team that everybody wants to tear down. The Bucks are supposed to blow out Penn State on Saturday. If Penn State comes in and plays really tough and it ends up being a close game, Penn State not going to get patted on the head for a good effort. Ohio State going to get torn down, and people going to push this Indiana as number one. We know how that rolls. The Big Ten is floating a new playoff format. We will hit on their latest, greatest idea today. And Penn State, after poaching Ohio State's defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, under James Franklin, are they now trying to poach another coach off the Ohio State staff? As the Brian Hartline to Penn State smoke gets louder and louder, is it real? Is it garbage? How would he do as a head coach of a big-time program with no experience? How would Ohio State do without him? Ironton High School, the story has sparked a lot of debate. And if you haven't heard that, we're going to brush up on that today. I'm going to walk you through what's going on down at Ironton. And we've got, I want to thank my man here before I go any further. Our guy here, Rob H., has gifted 20 Ohio State football at Buckeye Huddle memberships. Rob, that's awesome, man. Appreciate that so much. But no guest tonight. It's just me. I'm going to need you guys in the comments section at the end here when I get to you guys. So after I talk about that Hartline thing, I'm coming to you. Remember, if you got something for me in the chat, put a question mark, whether it's a statement or a question. Just put a question mark and it highlights it for me so I know to go to you. Ohio State coming off of bye weeks or open weeks. Now heading into the Penn State game, usually one of the most exciting games of the year. And the Buckeyes this year had 2 open weeks, and I absolutely hate getting through these open weeks once we get started. It's just unbearable for me. Now, we had 2 this year. That's not a rule change. It's just the way the calendar fell both last season and this season. So they start the season every year right after Labor Day, that Saturday. They end the season the final Saturday in November, and that usually is 13 weeks on the calendar. But in 24 and in 25, it was 14 Saturdays. So they said, well, let's just go with 2 open weeks and keep those dates the same, which they did. So next year, it's back to normal with just 1 open week, which I love. There's been a lot of talk of maybe moving that week 0 where we just have a couple of games and making that just week 1 for everybody and sticking with the 2 open weeks throughout the year every season, which, you know, ultimately it's a good thing for the college football fan because it gives us an entire week extra of a full slate of games. And I'm cool with that. Like a full slate of games on Saturday is the best thing ever. But it does mean we got to suffer through 2 weeks where our team isn't playing, which is just gut-wrenching, man. It was awful last week. But fortunately, we have had some pretty good slates of games like every Saturday, to be honest. And last Saturday was no different. I did a full breakdown of last Saturday over at Juck on Bucks this morning. You can check that out. But I think this season has been one of the more exciting seasons we've seen probably in our lives, honestly. And I think a lot of it has to do with the talent threshold being higher on every team as they can now supplement through the portal. So we're seeing much more competitive games throughout, and it's given us a better product and more games. Like I'm having a hard time keeping up with competitive games on different time slots, and that's usually not the case, man. So it's been pretty awesome. But let's get into this Penn State game. Started off Ohio State minus 17.5, quickly bet up to 20.5, which makes me a little nervous. So one thing about an open week, like I hate when a team is building momentum, and then they got to sit. And it felt like the offense and Julian Sam were really cooking the last game, and then you had to sit them down. And I just hate that. They were certainly building some serious momentum. When we looked at this schedule in the beginning of the year, looked like we had perfectly timed bye weeks. I loved it. You had one before Washington, which was great, and then you had one before Penn State. Perfect. Couldn't be better. I don't like it so much anymore. I actually think this is an area when it comes to performing coming off of an open week that separates the good coaches from the great coaches. Ryan Day 7-0 coming off an open week. Now, it's not always been pretty. Remember last year, you lose at Autzen Stadium to Oregon, and then you have a bye week. The next game was that Nebraska game. And that Nebraska game wasn't just a close game, and Nebraska had a game effort. It was a terrible performance by Ohio State. They were terrible. The senior leadership looked like they didn't want to be there. There was no juice. It was a bad game all around. And Tony and I were talking on the last Buckeye Huddle Primetime last Wednesday at 8 p.m. that had Ohio State played a game immediately after that Oregon loss, how deflated they were, might we have seen something similar that we saw with Penn State this year? They lose to Oregon, and it just totally ruined them mentally. Go out, lose to UCLA. In many ways, that was Jim Knowles' fault, and we'll talk about that a little later. Could Ohio State have been in danger of laying an egg like that? And I think when you see the performance they put up against Nebraska, you got to think maybe there might be something to that. Who knows? But Ohio State coming out of this open week, playing a wounded rival or not rival, depending on your stance on that. I know some of you are very touchy about that. I think this Penn State team has more than a puncher's chance to be competitive here. I think that 20.5 line, it's a line that Ohio State could absolutely cover easily, or it could be a really tight game. I think it's an opponent you really got to respect. When we look at this Penn State team, yes, they quit. They quit on their coach. They quit on James Franklin. He's gone. But the talent is still there. Now, it's definitely true that the talent on this team has been overrated. They should never have been national championship favorites. It's clear that losing Abdul Carter and Tyler Warren, their two best players, was a massive hit on the team. Your high-level talent carries you. They lost their most high-level talent. They brought in Trevor Pena and Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross to be their three stud receivers. It has not panned out like they would have hoped for. And that was supposed to be the missing piece, the wide receivers. Drew Aller, the most important piece, no longer with the team, and that may even be a good thing for them. Nobody was scared of Drew Aller, especially coming into Ohio Stadium. Their offensive game plans. I've been telling everybody for a year and a half that Andy Kotelnicki was nothing special. This guy got a lot of undue praise because he did a lot of goofy stuff. And people like to say his name, makes him sound smart. We know who Andy Kotelnicki is. It was just so obnoxious how much we had to hear about this guy who isn't an offensive mind. He literally came out and told us in a press conference last year, like, I don't really have much of an offensive philosophy. I just take other people's stuff and it's the Sunday and I throw some junk on it. And that's what he does. And that's what it looks like. Thank you for that question mark, buddy. You know, I hear often when people are talking about the Ohio State offense or other offenses, like, why don't they add more creativity? Why aren't they more creative in this and that? Like, I don't want creativity. Like, give me 10% creativity. Give me 90% better execution. Better execution is where it's at, man. Andy Kotelnicki is very creative. He can go ahead and keep that creativity. Give me execution 9 times out of 10 and we're good. But then you got the Knowles situation this week. I was talking to my buddy Landon Tangwell. He's a former Penn State player, and he does kind of what I do over in the Penn State space. And he was on my show last week talking about Jim Knowles. And he was talking about Jim Knowles and his complicated defense. And he was saying, you know, Ohio State fans were right. I'm sorry. And Jim Knowles, apparently, and I didn't see this comment, but he had said last week, yes, it's complicated. It's an NFL-style defense, and they're just going to have to get used to it. Now, he's very stubborn, and he won't dumb this down for them. And He wouldn't even put a spy on Nico out at UCLA when Nico was running like crazy. And then when he did, he put Deni Dennis Sutton, a 275-pounder, on him as a spy. That's not Arvell Reese. That's not going to work. So Landon says Ohio State fans were right. I wasn't right. I thought Jim Knowles would have the foresight to go in and take a group of talented guys that they had at Penn State on the defense, knowing that they had a 1-year window to win a national championship, and figured out a way to put them in the best position to win right now. I thought he would make sure of that. I thought he would have the flexibility to do that. He didn't, clearly, and he's just letting them bury themselves. Now, does he have the flexibility to do that for 1 week? He's coming into Ohio State, man, and he wants nothing more than to beat Ohio State. Remember, this is his first trip back in a long time, as he was not there for the celebration. He was disinvited to the celebration for the national championship. And remember, Ryan Day took this pretty personally. He took it pretty personally. He came out afterwards and he said straight up in an interview, and you got your name, and there's your name, and I understand it's a business, but your reputation. So like, he was straight out saying it, like, no, this wasn't cool. He didn't like it. And he definitely didn't like it when Jim Knowles asked for a raise before the national championship game. And who would, man? Like, I get that people will say, hey, you're a coach, your career is short. When you get your opportunity and you climb to the top, you got to get what you can get when you can get it. And who cares? We're talking about universities with billions of dollars. And I get it. I understand all that. But there's also, like, the people you work with every day. Nobody else on that staff was going in demanding a raise before the national championship game. That's just, you work on a team here, and that's a good way to get yourself ostracized. And he did. He ostracized himself. It was probably irreparable from that point on. And Ryan Day knew it. And he took a little shot at him. And Jim took some shots back at Ryan Day this offseason, talking about how they were doing things at Penn State, and it was just the best ever, and it had never been this way anywhere he's ever been. And it was a clear little poke back at Ohio State. That's all blown up in his face hysterically. Clearly nothing was better at Penn State than Ohio State. But you know that Knowles has been working on this game plan all year long, especially the last couple of weeks. Like, he's stubborn for sure. But this game right here, he'll do whatever he can to win this game. Ohio State fans are a loud presence in the college football world, a huge echo chamber, and he's been getting crushed by Ohio State fans. I mean, crushed ever since he left, but particularly since Penn State has fallen off a cliff. I don't know, I've taken some shots at him here and there. There is nothing more than he wants than to come in and put on a showing at the place he wasn't invited to for the national championship celebration. He wants to ruin our day. He wants to ruin Ryan Day's day, and he wants to sack and rattle the heck out of the young superstar quarterback. And he wants to do it with the kid from Ohio in the Chasmanian Devil, Chaz Coleman. And after seeing Ohio State's offensive line play their worst game of the year last week, 2 weeks ago, against Whiskey, Phil played his worst game of the week or the year. Tegra was bad. Austin Seerveld had his worst game. I expect him to bounce back quickly. But these offensive line for Ohio State, man, they're up for a challenge here. They're up for a challenge because the Penn State defensive line, they've got dudes. They've got dudes that Wisconsin didn't have. And they've got some angry coaches that are going to be sending them. Are we going to see Tegra? Are they going to start Josh Padilla, his very first game, starting against Penn State? I mean, risky move there, right? Tegra clearly the weak link, and it's certainly been on the pace for him to get supplanted, and Josh Padilla played good last game. But experience matters in a situation like this, and I think Ryan Day kind of tipped his hand last year when he decided to go with Carson Hinsman against Penn State, strictly because of Carson's experience. Carson wasn't the next man up, but he went with Carson. Turned out to be a brilliant move. Carson played an unbelievable game against Penn State last year. What's going to happen at right guard? Because if I'm Penn State, I am stunting all day on Tegra. After 24 starts, he still can't pick it up. I'm having Chaz Coleman coming after Phil Daniels all day long. Chaz hasn't played much in the last 2 weeks. He's been sick. And then they went against Iowa, who, they don't pass the ball much. And Chaz is a pass rusher. But there is no reason, if you're Penn State, not to absolutely go for broke. And if you get beat, you get beat. And that's what makes them dangerous. The scariest opponents, not just the ones that are on your level, but sometimes it's a very talented team that has nothing to lose. It's like playing poker with a bonehead who doesn't know what they're doing, right? Or sitting at a blackjack table with someone who has no clue what they're doing. And people hate that, man, because all the training, all the rules, they go out the window when someone's just screwing everything up. They're not playing by the historical rules. And if I'm Penn State, that's how I'm playing this. I'm going for broke every time. And that's a scary situation. Always tough to play against somebody who has nothing to lose, particularly when they're talented, and Penn State is. And the season's lost. It's a total lost cause. All their goals are gone except for one, and that's the Buckeyes. That's the Buckeyes, who none of these guys have beaten. And they came back their senior year. All their goals are gone. They've got one left. They got one shot to squeeze out some kind of accomplishment this year, to feel good about themselves. And don't forget, the younger guys, they like this head coach. They like this interim guy, and nobody likes change. If they can get a win and get this guy considered for the job, now he won't be considered for the job, even if he wins this game. But I'm sure they're under the impression if they can win this game for him, they could potentially keep him. That's a hell of a motivator. So they've got everything to play for. And Penn State, man, there's been a lot of years they haven't been nearly as talented as Ohio State on the field, and they've given us a heck of a game. A lot of years. Clearly, Ohio State more talented. I don't know that the gap is as big as it's been in some years. Of course, they've got freshman quarterback Ethan Grunkmeyer, an Ohio kid in year 2 at Penn State. He had his first start against Iowa. This will be his second ever start. Kid from Olentangy. Buckeyes have zero film on him. They don't know what's going to happen with this kid. He didn't even play the whole game at Iowa, a game that they only lost by 1, and Ethan played pretty well. The Buckeyes have not done great against the run this year. Katron Allen has been a machine this year, been really good running the ball. They got a great offensive line. Their offensive line coach, one of the best in the country, Phil Troutwine, a guy that I really wanted to steal from them before the Buckeyes got Tyler Bowen, who I love. I don't want him anymore, but I wanted him then. And a really good offensive line. So the Bucks are in for it if they can get any kind of pass game going to allow them to open up that run a little bit, and they'll be able to run. I think they'll be able to run a little bit if Ethan can support them a bit in the passing game. I don't think that can happen, though. I don't think it can happen. Defensively, man, they got to win it on defense. They got to play nasty. They got to get lucky. They got to play, honestly, a Michigan style of game. They got to force a couple turnovers, and Ohio State has to play not their best. That's the only way they got a shot here. But that 20.5-point line, it could be a blowout. It could be a blowout. That's for sure. It could be a 35-point win for the Buckeyes. But if it was a 14-point game and Ohio State was clearly in control the whole game, but they played to win it with the defense, like we've seen them play a couple times this year, that wouldn't surprise me one bit. We look at the Washington game, the Texas game, they were going to rely on the defense, not be aggressive on the offense unless they needed to be. And they ended up not ever needing to be throughout the game. Hunker down, let the defense win it. Do we see them play this game like that? Or do we see them go after it like we saw them last game against Wisconsin? Letting Julian Arian, have we seen kind of like the turn of the tide? Like, all right, now it's time and we're going to see this progressing to more of what we're going to see, hopefully what the finished product looks like. Or do we see a revert back to what it was before in those bigger games? I'm really curious about that. I got no idea what direction they're going to go, but it is going to be really interesting. And I think this could go either way. An 11-point win, a 35-point win. I don't think it's going to go Penn State's way, but I could see a tighter win. And that 20.5 is like, yeah, man, I'm scared of that. The Buckeyes have covered every game this year, every single game. So not too sure. If you could, please like the show tonight. Please share it if you're watching on X. And if you haven't subscribed to Buckeye Huddle yet, I don't know what you're waiting on. It just helps you find the videos. And we got great content over here at Buckeye Huddle. Now, the playoffs, the battle for the postseason format continues, and the deadline is December. December's the deadline, and if they don't come up with an agreement, the SEC and the Big Ten, then it just rolls into next year with the 12-team playoff again, which is great. I'm fine with it. I'm great with it. I enjoy this 12-team. I think it's just right. Now, the SEC and everybody else outside of the Big Ten wants the 5-11. So expand to 16, 5 automatic qualifiers, conference champions get the 5, and then 11 at large, decided by the committee. And the Big Ten originally wanted the 4-4-2-2-1-3, 4 at large bids to the SEC, 4 to the Big Ten, 2 to the ACC, 2 to the Big 12, 1 for the group of 5, and 2 at large. And the reason I love that format is because it incentivized scheduling out of conference games and winning out of conference games as well, because you had the at-large bids attached at the bottom there. Well, the Big Ten knows that that one's not going to fly. So Big Ten Tony Petitti has got a new proposal, and they've been floating for a while now, pushing to 28 or 32. Ross Bjork has been out there stumping for that as well. The new proposal that they've been floating is a way to get the ACC and the Big 12 on board. And the ACC and the Big 12 are on board immediately. Now, they don't have a vote. The SEC and the Big 10 have the final vote. But they have now floated, the Big 10 to the other conferences, a 24-team proposal with 4 automatic qualifiers to the Big 10, the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC. Then 2 to the group of 5 and 6 at large. Now, the Big 12 and the ACC love this because they get the same amount of automatic qualifiers as the Big 10 and the SEC, and they don't have to essentially sign on the paper saying, yeah, we're less than, which is what they're doing if they agree to half the amount of automatic qualifiers. Plus, they get 4 teams in, so they love it. But what this does is essentially guarantees out of the SEC and the Big 10 that they're going to get about 7 teams in a piece, or 8 in the SEC, 6 in the Big 10, etc. That is a whole lot of teams from the conference. What would that look like this year if this one goes through? As it currently stands, from the Big 10, you would have Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, Michigan, USC, and Washington. From the SEC, Texas A&M, Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Vanderbilt, Texas, and Tennessee. From the ACC, Georgia Tech, Virginia, Pitt, and Louisville. From the Big 12, BYU, Cincinnati, Texas Tech, Houston, then Navy and Memphis. Look, man, that's a lot of teams. I think watching that tournament sounds fantastic. I would love to watch that tournament. This is not about the tournament. That would be great. And some people say, well, why not, man? It's more football. It's more great football. Well, it's not more great football. You're trading football. The unintended consequence in this format, currently as we sit, you get 2 mulligans. You get 2 mulligans. In the 24-team system, you're guaranteed in at 9-3. And there will be plenty of 4-loss teams that make it in. And people say, what's wrong with that? You do that in the NFL. It's all good. Well, what's wrong with that is in the NFL, the difference between the best team and the worst team is not that much. Any given Sunday, anybody can win in the NFL. That is not the scenario in college football. The top 10 most talented teams and the bottom 10 look like different species of men on the teams. Like it's not anywhere close. We all know that. And now if we have a system like this with 24, we can look at the best 10 programs in the country. How many teams on the schedule can actually beat them in a given year? Well, for Ohio State, that number is usually 3, and maybe you can push it to 5 if those 2 teams have the perfect game and Ohio State has a really bad game. So in a format like this, if it passes, Ohio State and every program in the upper echelon of college football can lose every competitive game on their schedule, and still they're a playoff team. What's that do to the regular season? It basically means during the regular season, if you are one of those programs, or if you cheer for one of those programs, you never play a game of consequence in terms of the playoffs in the regular season ever again. Doesn't mean you can't have meaning to games. Rivalries will still have meaning, but none of the games have consequences for the postseason. You can steamroll, you can walk your way to 8-4, and you're in, especially if you're a brand name. Well, that sucks. That sucks. Some people say, well, it means more games have meaning. No, it doesn't. It means you're shifting the focus. You're shifting the focus from the games with the really good teams have a lot of meaning to now we have games of meaning between Pitt and NC State. Well, I don't want games of meaning between Pitt and NC State if I got to trade it for Ohio State and Penn State. That's not fun. You're just shifting it. That's a crappy product. And I'll tell you what, for the people who are watching Ohio State play this year and they're like, man, I don't like the way they're playing. It's boring, but I get why they're doing it because they can do it. They can get away with playing like this. They're still going to make the playoffs. Well, guess what happens when everybody is in that situation at the top of college football? They're all going to play like Ohio State's playing this year with half a hand tied behind their back the entire regular season. Does that sound like fun? No, that doesn't sound like fun. Now, luckily for us, those of you who share my opinion on this, the SEC, very resistant to this. They do not want this new proposal. They didn't want the 4-4-2-2-1-3. They want the 5-11. And they are standing pat. Now, they've done what they said they were going to do. They've gone to their 9 conference games. And it's clear that Tony Petitti's still not satisfied. All this guy wants to do is maximize TV revenue. That's all he cares about. But he's just following marching orders. Not his fault. I'm pretty disgusted that the Big Ten leadership hired this guy and gave him these marching orders, which is essentially, look, we don't care about the sport. We don't care about the product. We care about maximizing the dollars any way you got to go about it. And it's very short-sighted. It's very short-sighted. They think they can just maximize the drama of the playoffs and still hold on to what they have in the regular season. That's not the way it works. We saw it in basketball. The college basketball regular season used to be awesome. I can't tell you the last time I watched a regular season college basketball game. I watched the Big Ten tournament and then the big tournament, but regular season, man, maybe 1 or 2 a year if my kid's watching it. It's boring. It's boring. It's pointless. Get to the tournament, how they doing, check the standings, whatever. I mean, it's taken a huge nosedive. And they're trying to do it with college. And the Big Ten made it clear where they stand when they try to take this private equity deal. Like, this is just, they just want money. That's it. So thank goodness for the SEC. How about them apples? Never thought I'd hear you say it. All right. Please like the show. I'm going to get to a couple of your comments, and then we're going to roll into the juicy topic of the day. Oh, here we go. Chuck, you sound like an old man, a very old man. I am indeed an old man. No doubt about it. Yeah, Reg, I don't mind a 16-team playoff. The 5-11 and the 4-4-2-2-1-3, they're fine with me. But like Zinter says here, a 24-team severely diminishes the interest in the regular season. There'd be so many inconsequential games for the best 12 to 15 programs. Absolutely. No doubt about it. The Scooch, man. Indiana is not better than Ohio State. Indiana being who they are has to do with what they are doing, blowing teams out. OSU is playing the long game, knowing they got a long way to go. Like, anybody watching college football who doesn't think Ohio State could be blowing these teams out the same way Indiana is just fooling themselves. They absolutely could. We know that. Austin, Chuck, do you think the players and staff will play the game with animosity instead of playing conservative due to the Jim Knowles storyline? I feel this game, they let Sayin and the players loose. I don't think the players really feel the animosity. I think there are some coaches that feel some animosity, but honestly, I don't know. I could go either way on this as to how they're going to play this game. I could see Ryan Day wanting to play this game, really putting it on them, but then I could also see, like, all right, let's not be silly. Who really cares? Let's just go get this win, move on with the rest of our season, and keep everybody healthy. You know what I mean? Undisputed does not like the idea of that playoff. College football all my life, but that would sound terrible to me. Yeah, hit the like button, y'all. All right. Rob, with another 10 gifted memberships. Thank you so much, buddy. So let's move on to the juicy story of the day. After I answer this, no longer the man says, Chuck, do you believe Indiana is the second best team in the country? I do. It took me a long time to come around, but I do. I believe they're that good. So I got to talk to a couple more people about this, but it appears, and I'm really hesitant to say this because the Hartline stuff sounds like it actually might have legs. Like they actually might really be interested in Hartline, and he may be listening. And I first got asked about this by somebody in my comment section like a week ago about, do I think Hartline would leave for Penn State? And my initial response was, you don't even need to look at it from Hartline's position. Look at it from the Penn State angle. Penn State has their pick of the litter this cycle, and they did at that point. And you don't need somebody to rebuild. You don't got a lot to do. What you're looking for is a guy who can take you from 10 wins to championships. So if that's your goal, does Brian Hartline fit that mold? Well, no. He's a guy that has a learning curve, as a head coach. He's a guy that needs to learn how to hire, how to run his own organization. He's not a guy that's ready to walk in and say, yes, I could get you from 10 wins to a championship, at least not for his first couple of years. So if you're Pat Kraft at Penn State, like looking at him as a potential hire, yeah, no, like you need to be prepared to back him for several years at 8 wins to watch him grow. If that's the kind of hire you're planning on getting, a Hartline-esque hire or any first-time head coach. So even if you believed in him long-term, is that what you're looking for now that you have just fired a guy who was winning you 10 games every year, getting you the playoffs, got you the Final Four last year? I don't think so. I don't think that makes any sense at all. That was my initial thought. Well, we've now seen the LSU and Florida jobs come open. Jobs are going to pay a ton more money, and a lot of people think this now diminishes the Penn State job opening. I really don't, because I don't think they're after the same candidate pools. I think LSU and Florida are both after Kiffin as their number one candidate, and LSU is just fine if they don't get him because John Sumrall is the perfect dude for them. At Tulane, perfect. And right now, they actually opened up the Vegas odds. He is the odds-on favorite to get the LSU job. I think Florida will get Lane Kiffin. They tried to get Marcus Freeman first. Penn State would obviously love Marcus Freeman. Marcus Freeman's not leaving. Marcus Freeman's got it made in the shade, man. He is a modern-day Notre Dame legend. He's recruiting in the top 5. He has no reason to leave at all. And I don't, when he talks about Notre Dame, I believe everything he says. I don't think there's any coach speak to it. They gave him that opportunity because the guys wanted him. And I believe he appreciates that so much in the position that they put him in. I don't think he'd leave for Ohio State at this point. I really don't. So he's certainly not leaving for Florida or Penn State. But the Hartline thing just seemed really far-fetched to me. And I was really dismissive about it. And then I remembered I was really dismissive of the Jim Knowles stuff too. I kind of embarrassed myself, to be honest. I was so dismissive of the Jim Knowles stuff, particularly, remember the Oklahoma thing was the first thing with Knowles. And I was roasting those Oklahoma folks. I mean, I was cooking them. I was cooking them on the show. I was, my wife is texting me right now. Like she knows I'm live on a show. Like of all people to text me, you know what I mean? She's right there. Anyway, I was cooking the Oklahoma folks. I was cooking their publications that were running with this because the story originally came from a Rivals Oklahoma message board about Jim Knowles and the fiance. You remember the story. The fiance living in Oklahoma. That's why he might want to go back there. Well, Jim Knowles has since come out and said it was all true. The whole thing was true. And I totally dismissed it. Then when it came to Penn State, I dismissed it even more. So with Hartline, I don't want to be all dismissive and look like a fool again, but I can just say, speaking as if I'm a Penn State fan, like my initial reaction is no, like I don't want that. Like that's a big risk. Yes, I think you got a really high ceiling with Hartline, but you also got a low floor, and that's not what I want right now. I want a guy who can come take the James Franklin up another level, and it just doesn't sound like that. However, if we look at James Franklin, who was a steady Eddie with a high floor and a not so high ceiling, if you're trying to go maybe the opposite of James Franklin, a coordinator an up-and-comer from somewhere is your guy. Many Penn State fans would say he's a brand new coordinator. He hasn't even shown he's good as a coordinator yet. Well, he's not a brand new coordinator. His first year calling plays, his third year as a coordinator. But the beauty of that is in today's college football, the head coach is a CEO. And Penn State, their sources, some of them are now saying that Hartline is a candidate, which means, he's interested, or they're not coming out and saying he's a candidate. And remember, Hartline did interview for the West Virginia job when they hired Rich Rodriguez, which I thought was insane. If I was West Virginia, that's the program to hire a Brian Hartline. West Virginia, perfect. Instead, they went with an old retread, and the games passed him by. But they're definitely interested at Penn State with Brian Hartline. Joe Smetzler of Nittany Sports now confirmed he is officially a candidate, and I believe they're talking, which is pretty disgusting, and it stings. It stings bad. But I've been saying since the start of my show, when people say things like talking about Eric McFarland, a wide receiver in the class of 2028, hey, as long as Hartline's here, we got him. I'm just like, man, I don't know what would make you think Hartline would still be here for the class of 2028. This is a guy who just interviewed at West Virginia. His career trajectory and respect is like skyrocket through the moon. He said in the offseason, whenever, there's been an opportunity for him to grow, he feels like he has to take it, to challenge himself, to get better. He already carries himself around the program like the assistant head coach. Not his title. That's what it feels like. And if Penn State wants to hire him as the head coach, he's absolutely going to listen. And you can say all you want. He's made a ton of money. He doesn't need any more money. Loyalty to Ohio State. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars and an opportunity to start a head coaching career at a top 15 program in the history of college football that's been winning 10 games and is about to make a bigger commitment into football financially than they did under the last guy. They are ready to pump money into this. They want to win championships. Is it crazy to hire a guy with no coaching experience? Is it crazy to hire a coordinator who's only been on the job a couple years to be the head coach? Well, you're looking at Ohio State with Ryan Day, Oregon with Dan Lanning, Georgia with Kirby Smart. All the same scenario, all coordinators, first time at big time programs. The modern day coach is about being a CEO. In Hartline, I don't know if you could find many better suited to walk in and nail it right off the rip. He's got all the same qualities that everybody loves about Dan Lanning. He's a tough, no-nonsense, fierce competitor, younger guy. Young guys love him. Everybody talks about him nonstop. He's cool. He's got the it factor. And if they hire Brian Hartline, I believe he'll be very good as long as they are supporting him with the money, and it appears that they're ready to do that. And, of course, he gets a good supporting staff. Dan Lanning has been excellent at hiring. Will Hartline be excellent at hiring? He's going to have a great quarterback and great wide receivers. Absolutely. I mean, if he could retain Phil Troutline and offensive line, he'd be off to a great start. But, sometimes I look at this as an opposing fan when a school is hiring a coach and I say, all right, who do I not want them to have? Who am I concerned with? And for Penn State, I was talking to Landon last week. I said, Fran Brown. If you guys hire Fran Brown, I'll be concerned. Well, if they hire Brian Hartline or John Sumrall, which they won't because he's not coming up north, I would be concerned. If they hire a retread, Matt Rule type of dude, whatever. I don't care at all. But you put some young guy that's full of piss and vinegar that I think is really smart and people love, but he's tough. Dude, he's got it all. He's got it all. So as for the Ohio State fans panicking over this, what if he leaves? And I've seen it's going to shake the foundation. Ryan Day's built his whole 10 years based on great wide receiver play and great quarterbacks. Here's the thing. Ohio State is now wide receiver U, right? in many ways, thanks to Brian Hartline. What this also means is you inevitably are going to attract the very best wide receiver coach in the country that's not named Brian Hartline. Whoever that is, I don't know, but he's coming. And Ryan Day has not missed on a hire in a long time. So is it something to be worried about? Absolutely not. Not at all. It's something we just need to get used to at this point, because Ryan Day's program is now being viewed like Alabama. And he's going to keep nailing his hires, and people are going to keep coming and hiring them away. And that's just what it's going to be. And we got to get used to this. It is what it is. All we got to do is trust in the coach to go hire the next guy. And it sucks when it's a guy that's been around forever. And we've just been able to rely on that consistent greatness out of not only his room, but his recruits. In a lot of classes, his recruits have propped up classes. No doubt about it, man. The guy's been awesome. But this day has been coming for a long time. If this is, in fact, the opportunity that he gets, it's been coming for a long time. This was never going to last more than a couple more years with him. I thought that if he put a good year together this year, he would get some offers this offseason. 2 good years, and it would be a big-time offer. Maybe it's just accelerated now. There's only been in the last, I think, 20 years, I did the math, 20 years, 13 times that one of the big jobs in the region, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State, has been open. So it's not often those jobs come open. I mean, this is a coveted job in the coaching profession. And if you got an opportunity to get one of those jobs, you have to not only listen, you probably got to take it. And that's where I think we're at with Hart. So if they want him, I think he'll take it. That's my thought on it. But that's the juicy story of the day. Love to hear what you guys are thinking about this. And I will scroll through and see if you guys got anything to say on the Brian Hartline Penn State thingamabob. Jason says 3 guys I do not want them to hire: Summerall, Fran Brown, and Hartline. Summerall and Brown because of their success at far lesser programs. Hartline because we would lose him. Zinter says that Penn State gig is going to be daunting the first 6 weeks with a ton of work to do. How in the hell would Hartline be able to manage that and keep his duties at OSU through the season? So we remember when the 2014 national championship season. And why am I trying to blank here? The goofball, the offensive coordinator. Help me out here. He got hired at Houston, remember, before the season was over, and put his Houston hat on. Tom Herman put his Houston hat on as soon as they won the national championship with confetti dropping. You know what I mean? So that's it's a sticky situation for sure. Richie does not get the Fran Brown hype, man. It's the way the kids react to him, dude. It's the way the kids react to him. It's something different. I think if Fran Brown was at Penn State, they immediately lock back down New Jersey, where he's from, by the way, Maryland, Virginia, DC. Like, he can beat people without the money, just like Hartline. There's some guys that are just special like that. I think he's that type of dude. Josh says it's not about losing Brian, it's about losing his recruiting. Rome, no, I will not be at the game on Saturday. Roger, yes, no different than the SEC coaches that were under Saban getting poached. And that's where we're at now. That's where we're at with Ryan Day. That's how people view his guys. Mozart's Ghost says he did not want PSU to get Signetti. I mean, I don't know how much that makes a difference, right? Like 6 in one, half dozen in the other. We gotta face him in Indiana, and I don't know how you guys feel about Signetti in Indiana. Like, I think they're here to stay as a consistent top competitor. Sure, he could take Penn State to those heights too, but we're talking about the number 2 team in the country right now. recruits are starting to talk very differently about Indiana, and they've got money that they are now putting behind him. I'm seeing guys that are scheduling official visits to Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Indiana. You know what I mean? Like, not those four specifically, but like I'm seeing that kind of four come out, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? They've got a whole different feel about Indiana than you would ever think. They don't have in their brain who Indiana has been their whole lives like we do. So he's turning that around real quick. Jason thinks Hartline needs more time, doesn't scare him. Yeah, you're right, Mozart. That was 1 or 2 games, not a half season. I mean, it would be a really strange situation. I don't know what Ryan Day would do with that situation. Hardy Jen says, please hire Fraud Brown. He does not believe it. He does not believe in the Fran Brown hype. Caleb is really starting to believe Urban Meyer to Penn State. Now, that one right there, go ahead. Like, I don't think Urban could be a successful coach in this era. I think it's way past him by at this point. Not that he's a really old guy. I just don't. Richie Dubs, do I think Indiana is better than A&M? Slightly. Yeah, I do. But I do think A&M is the real deal. Would Hartline take Chris Henry Jr. with him if he ends up leaving? It's going to be rough to hold on to any of the guys that are committed to him, but Henry's sister goes to Ohio State. So, I mean, like, that's a lot of the pull for him. But, you know, you never know. I mean, we've seen him pull off a whole lot of stuff. Rob does not see Urban coming back to college football either. I mean, like, I think he knows that he would not be good in this era. You know, we talk about Ryan Day's culture and what he's been able to build. And like, I'm a firm believer that his culture is what is separating like Ohio State from a lot of the good schools that are also losing a lot of guys in the portal. You know, see Georgia losing guys like Damon Wilson and stuff, in Ohio State yet to lose a primetime guy that they wanted to keep on the roster. It's just not happened. And so much of that is Hartline's culture. Now you add a guy like Urban, who even I'm sure would definitely try to soften himself up. Like, there's only so much you can do if you are who you are, you know? And he's an old school coach. And I just don't know how good that works when we're talking about guys who can pick up and leave whenever they want. Richie thinks A&M is a lot better than Indiana. You know, it'll be interesting to see. That Big Ten championship game will be unbelievable. I can't wait for it. Oh, Terry makes a great point here. The Big Ten should adopt the ACC replay program that allows the TV viewers to hear and see what they're discussing. I would love that, Terry. I think that is so cool. Man, it's been a quick 50 minutes. I feel like I just started. Here, we got a Penn State fan in the house. As a Penn State fan, our guy says, I'd take either Meyer or Hartline, anything other than James Franklin or Brian Kelly. Are people talking about Brian Kelly? Like, that would be like, go for it. Go hire Brian Kelly. I mean, if there's anybody who wants that, I question their football acumen, man. All right, I got to move on to this Ironton story here real quick before we end the show. So the Ironton Fighting Tigers banned from this year's postseason tournament by the OHSAA. Ironton is a little high school down in Southeast Ohio, just blocks from the Ohio River. You can get to Kentucky or West Virginia in 20 minutes. And it's just one of these little football loving tiny towns like a Steubenville or a Mogador or a Coldwater, Marion local. And I love these towns, man. Like I love these places to me are just like special about Ohio. I mean, sure, they're everywhere. I don't think there's many states outside of Ohio and Texas that have so many of these little joints that all they care about is the high school football team. I think it's just awesome. So 3-time state champions, and they've been to the state championship game 12 times back to 73, which is amazing. Last year, they just won their third. They've had some players. They sent Sean Terry to Missouri last year. That dude's a stud. 400 total population in the high school. And the last few weeks, the OHSAA has been investigating Little Ironton High School for recruiting violations. And they've made their ruling that Ironton not able to participate in this year's state tournament, despite heading in to their final game last Friday at 8-1, a game that they won, but they ended up giving them a forfeit because they played an ineligible player. They also got a $7,500 fine, but they did not have to forfeit last year's state championship. And there's so many parallels to the scum investigation. 3 years probation, and the district has agreed that they will change their policies on enrollment and transfers and attend educational seminars. And the details on exactly what they did are pretty scarce here, but the investigation determined that there were many members of this football team that had been recruited from not just around the state, but from Kentucky and West Virginia, coming across the bridge to Ironton, Ohio, to move their family to Ironton to go to high school there. The OHSAA also found evidence that they were giving people, the coaches, tips on how to avoid leaving evidence of their infractions, their interactions, which obviously demonstrates that they were aware of their wrongdoing and they were intentionally trying to cover it up and circumvent the rules. The OHSAA said, due to the scope and coordination of these activities, as well as the number of impermissible contacts, this is a serious and pervasive violation over the course of several years. One of the parents of one of the kids that got suspended is suing the OHSAA, saying that they are residents of the state of Ohio. But the crux of the matter and what got people so bent out of shape was the amount of kids from out of state that were coming to Ironton, a place that, doesn't have a plethora of opportunities that you would think people would want to come move to Little Ironton, Ohio, to go to high school. The number of kids that have moved in my life, that I know of, that have moved to Massillon to go play football, it just cracks me up. Ironton's just a little one on a small scale. We got a lot of places like this. Same thing happens in Steubenville. They're not accused of paying these kids, just recruiting them. But there are a lot of people who are coming to the defense of Ironton here, saying, hold up a minute. Catholic schools have done this for years and years and years. They're allowed to get kids from anywhere. And you're going to come down on this school for doing the same thing. And I get it. But if you are a school that competes with Ironton around that area and you're not doing that, you're going to be furious. So I understand that. Now, obviously, it's true that Catholic schools, I went to a Catholic high school. I played football at a Catholic high school. They were 4-time state champions when I got there, and football was the deal, man. You played football. There were plenty of guys on the team coming from a long ways away to play football. It was expensive to go to school there. A lot of guys on the team were not paying their way to go to school there. And I get it. Obviously, Catholic schools attract a lot of talent because of the supposed, I want to get my kid there and it's a better education, which in a lot of, truth be told, it's not in many places. But then success begets success, which means you get a better football program in the 70s. And over the course of time, that's the place to be. You put more players in college. And it all started with them being able to pull from anywhere they want. Public schools can't. But the recruiting rules, I think a lot of people are surprised to know, they are the same. Catholic schools are not allowed to just go out and recruit. Those are violations. Hoban's coach right now was suspended a couple years ago for recruiting violations. Doesn't stop Hoban from pulling players from all over. In fact, Rock Hill, they're the number one player in Ohio who is committed to USC. he lives in Cleveland. He commutes from Cleveland to Akron every day to go to school at Hoban. And there's tons of kids like that. Like I went to school with the quarterback of my high school football team, later won national championships at Mount Union and played in the NFL for a couple of years. He drove 50 minutes to school every day. And that's how Catholic schools roll, man. That's how they roll. But it makes people mad when they see a public school get the laws come down on them like this. And I get it. But at the same time, if you play against this school, like you're going to be furious. You're going to be absolutely furious. So you can also see from these parents' standpoints, like if you got a kid who's any good at football and you live in a district that doesn't have a good football program, you know, you want this kid to maybe get noticed or potentially play at a Mount Union or a John Carroll. You know, even if any kind of next level of football, they got to get noticed. And that doesn't happen at a lot of schools. You're just not going to get noticed. So you can certainly understand if there's a place like Ironton that's sending a kid like Sean Terry to the SEC, Reed Carrico to Ohio State, and your kid's got any amount of talent, you want him to go to that place that's got some kind of, you know, you're going to get some juice. You got coaches that have dealt with college coaches. You can get his name out there. So I get it for sure. But interesting debate, man, and it caused quite a stir. The Ironton football players were out there protesting on the school board's steps as they were in their meeting because they wanted them to fight the OHSA. They got no leg to stand on. They can't really fight. Small Town Collectibles says USC is in the trash part of LA too. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. UCLA, really nice part. Brad says Ignatius and Eds used to recruit all of Northeast Ohio back in the day. I mean, they still do. They all do. They are allowed to. So if you are in the Catholic school district of that high school, they're allowed to talk to you, just like public schools. Like, let's say if there are multiple public schools in the city, let's just use Akron, for example, 5 public high schools, and you are a 7th and 8th grader in the public school system, and that's a kid in your district, you're allowed to go recruit them, make contact with them. But for the most part, yeah, none of them are allowed to do anything, but they do it. And we know they all do it. And that's why a lot of people are mad that, well, Summerall's only going to Kentucky if they fire Stoops, and they got to fire Stoops and pay a huge buyout. And it's different than these other buyouts. Stoops' buyout is due immediately. It's not like line item over the next 10 years. It's due immediately. But regardless, I don't think Summerall's picking Kentucky over LSU, whether he's an alumni or not. I think that would be career suicide. Rob said, Ironton is near my hometown of Portsmouth. Haven't been there in a couple of decades, but I'm sure it's cool. Yeah, they were accused of, illegally recruiting, particularly kids from out of state, which is just like, it's funny and awesome. And also, if I lived around there, I would be furious. You know what I mean? Like, I get it from all points here. I get it from all points. And I've certainly seen recruiting in high school football. And, you know, it's funny that it matters so much to so many people, but I also think it's unique at the same time. And I kind of like it. So I don't know. Chris, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. You're the best, Chuck. Go Bucks. Go Bucks. Shepherd Ducks, what's up there? How the Buckeyes doing today? Are you disappointed that Oregon hired a first-time head coach? I'm guessing the Duck fans are not disappointed by that. I don't think the Penn State fans would be either. I think that if they hired Hartline, it would be a really popular hire and people would go nuts in Penn State. And they would think that automatically they were about to be top 5 in recruiting and start beating Ohio State every year, which is exactly what every fan base in the SEC thought when they hired one of Saban's assistants away from him. It is. It surely is. Anyway, that'll do me for today, guys. I will see you on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Tomorrow, Ryan Day's press conference. We'll be down there streaming that live here on Buckeye Huddle Primetime. Not Primetime, just on regular Buckeye Huddle. Please do check us out over on the website at buckeyehuddle.com. We do appreciate you all so much. And we'll talk to you on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Chuck on Buckeye Huddle out.